Hey guys, this is Sharad with REsimpli. I'm the host of REsimpli podcast, and I have the honor of having Jesse Alvarez on today's podcast interview. Hey Jesse, how are you doing, man?
Living the dream. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for coming on the show, man. Yeah, tell us a little bit about yourself. Where you're joining from, what do you do, how did you get started in real estate?
I live in Northern California now, just outside of the Bay Area. I grew up in Oregon, small town in Oregon, and I grew up in a family pretty middle class. But one thing about my family that I guess was unique is everybody invested in real estate one way or another. And so I kind of grew up around real estate my entire life. I don't think I ever would consider either of my parents or grandparents real estate investors, but they knew that if they bought real estate, bought the right real estate, and held it for long enough, that in the long term it would be a good investment for them. So there wasn't really any discussion of strategies or why they were buying certain properties or 1031 exchanges. There was none of those type of conversations really growing up, but I kind of assumed that someday in my life I'd probably own some real estate. So when I was 19, I got in a little argument with my parents and moved out. Maybe I was a little rebellious at the time. And so I guess I got kicked out. I didn't move out, but I ended up sleeping on a buddy's couch, my best friend's couch. And the time came where his parents had owned that property for a while. They wanted to sell it and they asked me if I wanted to buy it. And I was 19 at the time. And I was like, uh, I, I, I don't know. So I kind of lucked into a deal where they seller financed me my first property at 19 with 10% down. So that's kind of where it got started. And then I got locked into the corporate world where I had the golden handcuffs where I just couldn't leave, and they took care of me so well. So I was working in corporate America for almost 15 years, and I started investing in real estate, I guess, as an investor around 2011, where I bought my first place in Phoenix, Arizona.
Got it. And then do you still own the property that you bought as your buddy's parents' house?
No, we ended up 1031 exchanging that into a better property. At the time, I bought it because it was an opportunity to purchase with seller financing. And this is before anybody even talked about seller financing. There was no
Right.
YouTube or anything to really learn that type of stuff. So it was really my buddy's parents that were like, well, this is an option. You don't have to go to the bank. And so
That's incredible. It's
yeah,
incredible
I
to
kind of
just have that be
locked into
offered to
that
you.
one. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And then where was that property? Was that in Oregon?
Yeah, that was up in Oregon, in Sherwood, Oregon. It's a suburb of Portland.
Got it. And then at 15 years you worked in corporate real estate, and then why buy in Phoenix?
Well, I was living in San Jose at the time.
Oh,
I grew up in Oregon and I got recruited down to the Bay Area, and I was looking at the cost of houses and I was like, this is crazy. This is absolutely crazy what people are paying for houses. And so I was never home. I was on the road 5 days out of the week. And so I just started stacking my paychecks and ended up buying my first place in Phoenix because I did some studying on the markets and it was one of the hardest hit by the housing downturn. So they were selling houses for almost nothing. They were giving them away.
right. So you bought it as an investment property just to strictly keep it as a rental property, right? And then
Yeah,
hopefully
yeah,
get some appreciation.
absolutely. Yeah,
Were you,
it was a short sell, so it had a little bit of distress, but it there wasn't really any strategy around buying a distressed property or direct to seller or anything like that. It was on the market for quite a while, but at that time, stuff was sitting on the market for quite a while.
right?
Nothing was selling in 2011. Prices were just tanking.
Were you actively studying the Phoenix market, or you just kind of, read a little bit online? How like,
Absolutely.
yeah,
So we don't invest anywhere unless we fully understand the market, the neighborhood, the street. We're very strategic. This investment was a newer development. And when I was studying that neighborhood, I saw there was a long strip through the center of the neighborhood. And I thought it was the most weird thing. I was like, what is this? Is this power lines? What's going through the middle of this neighborhood? And I pulled up Google Maps, did my research, and there's nothing there. It's just this long strip of grass through the middle of the neighborhood. It's not a park. And so I kept digging, and I found out it was the freeway extension. And this neighborhood was a pretty remote neighborhood. That's part of the reason why the prices were as low, but it was still in Phoenix. And they were about to build a 8-lane freeway right through the middle of the neighborhood, which some people would say that sounds horrible. But if you're commuting into downtown Phoenix or going up to Scottsdale,
Yeah.
your drive into work goes from 30 minutes down to 8. So
Wow.
I knew it was going to make the neighborhood much more desirable, and there was going to be some businesses that came in, and it was really going to change that part of town, and it did.
If you don't mind sharing, how much did you pay for the property? Do you still own it or did you exit from it?
So I paid 60,000 for it. It was a 3-bedroom, 2-bath track home, 1533 square feet, just your average single level track home. And we
Right.
ended up exiting from that in 1031ing it into a triplex here in California a couple years ago. But we ended up selling it for, I think it was like 225, 250, somewhere around there.
Oh, yeah. You like 4x your money on that. It's
Yeah,
incredible.
yeah. Not
Yeah,
bad.
not bad at all. Yeah, not bad at all. So you mentioned that, a few moments ago, like when we buy a property, so I'm assuming this is not just you doing anymore. So what happened after that? Kind of just, walk us through on your progress.
Sure. So I guess my third property would have been my first place in California, which is it's still actually our primary residence. Growing up in Oregon, everybody kind of moves out when they're 18 or 19, or they get kicked out like me. They kind of buy a small starter home. But as soon as I moved to California, I realized there's a lot of well, we refer to it as the California house hack, where you find a house with multiple bedrooms, you rent out the bedrooms to people, and it pays your mortgage. So I started researching different ways to be able to buy a house in California. And I started doing the math, and I was like, I can buy a 4-bedroom house right now, and I can rent out the 3 bedrooms and live for free. And I was like, that sounds
Right,
pretty good.
right.
So I had a little bit of money saved up at the time, but nothing nearly enough for a down payment on a California house. So I took a loan for my 401k for the down payment and then purchased that place. So I rented out the 3 bedrooms for about a year or two, and literally living rent free, being able to save more and more money to buy more properties. And eventually I met my now wife, Isabel, and she said, okay, we're adults now. You
Yeah,
probably need to have the roommates move out. So
right. And then what happened? Like, so you bought that third property, then what kind of, led you on to the next deal and just getting deeper into real estate investment journey?
yeah, so at that point I was still only at, I guess, 3 doors. And so it started becoming pretty apparent to me that this was a good way to build wealth. And the market, obviously, the first, well, the second and third properties that I bought were in such a low time in the market, 2011, 2013, where the prices were just so low and they were going up so fast. And so we started looking at other options. I bought a duplex with my mother here in town, that we still hold to this day. And then my wife is primarily the only other person I've invested with, and we are buying duplexes, triplexes here in Northern California. And we target, I would say, a pretty specific type of property. We're looking for like B plus, A minus type neighborhoods, but that have duplexes and triplexes in them, which are
Right.
pretty hard to find. And we look for distressed properties, obviously. And what we're doing is we're buying these distressed properties, we're fixing them up, and we're probably guilty of over improving for rentals, but it's part of our strategy and it's worked really well. Is we over improve the property, and we get those tenants that have a very high income, very high credit score, and are willing and able to pay a higher rent premium to get themselves into a nicer neighborhood as a renter.
And what part of Northern California are you buying these properties in?
So we live in Tracy, California. So we're just we're basically in between San Francisco and Sacramento. It's kind of a bedroom community. A lot of people commute into the Bay Area for their tech jobs. So there's a lot of young tech professionals that live in this area and then commute in. So that's primarily what a lot of our tenants are, is young tech professionals.
Right. And how far are you from like the Silicon Valley area? Like about 45 minutes to an hour?
Without traffic, you can get there in probably about 35 minutes. But with
That never
traffic,
happens.
it could be pretty bad.
Yeah.
So over an hour, yeah.
Right.
Yesterday I drove into Santa Clara and it took an hour, so not too bad.
Yeah, that's not too bad. And then are you primarily just investing in California market now, or are you still doing out of state investing?
So we had a couple properties in Phoenix. We pulled out of there. We had a couple up in Oregon, pulled out of Oregon, and right now we're primarily only in Northern California. Within an hour is kind of our market, within an hour of our home.
I'm curious, what's the reason for that? You're familiar with investing out of state, you grew up in a different state. You understand you can get higher rate of return, cash flow on out of state properties. Like, why invest in your backyard?
I think it mostly has to do with being able to understand our market and know it inside and out. I could be flying out to the Midwest and researching markets there. I'm really comfortable with Northern California because I understand it. And I think I don't want to ever have analysis paralysis and not
Right.
invest. And so California, everybody hates in California real estate investing. It gets a lot of bad rap online. We actually love it. So are you familiar with Prop 13?
I'm not. I just moved to California like 6 months ago.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah. There's
So
always
Prop
something crazy
13,
going on with
yeah,
California. I know that. Yeah.
we have such a massive housing shortage. And if you were to watch the news, you'd think the world was coming to an end. But we have such a massive housing shortage, and there's a very, very limited amount of land to build on. So in the Bay Area specifically, there's not a whole lot of buildable land. So they're literally tearing down houses to build apartment complexes now. So we have a supply restraint that's definitely helping with the appreciation. And then we've got more red tape than you could ever imagine to make sure that that kind of stays intact. So our rents are very strong. Our renter base is very strong. The quality of tenants is phenomenal. Their incomes is great. And the numbers, I think I would rather own one duplex or triplex here and get the cash flow that we're getting than own maybe a 7 or 8 unit in the Midwest that cash flow is exactly the same. I only have to deal with 1 or 2 broken toilets instead of
Right.
8. So there's some distinct advantages. We utilize the BRRRR method on a lot of these. So we're looking for distressed, we're adding value, and then we're doing a cash out refi to pull our equity out and roll it into the next project. So on a lot of these, we're able to pull out all of our capital that we've invested into the down payment and the rehab cost, and then roll it into the next property. Between the appreciation and the cash flow, it's hard to rival it.
Yeah, no, I totally get it. The California, you can't beat the appreciation. Yeah, I just like for pretty much any 10-year period that you hold the property, it's gonna go up. Are you buying
Yeah.
primarily for cash flow or appreciation? If the property didn't appreciate and you just got cash flow, would you be happy with that?
So that's everybody's favorite question, and I like to think that we're somewhere in the middle. We're buying in neighborhoods that are high appreciation, but I'm making sure that they cash flow well on day one, so that on year 10 they're cash flowing phenomenally well. Prop
Right.
13 limits our property taxes, how much they can go up. So if you hold something for 10 years, the cash flow only gets better. Every time that a tenant moves out, the rents are significantly higher. So we just had a tenant move out last week, and we're able to raise rents $450 just on that unit,
Wow.
just over a 3-year period.
Wow. That's like extra 5,000. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
crazy. And then can you walk us through like a typical numbers on a property, like your average deal? What does that look like?
So yeah, I can give you a kind of a general thing of what our last few have looked like. It's a little different the last couple of years, or specifically the last year, because of what interest rates have done. But typically we're looking for a distressed property somewhere in the 350 to 450 range that we can put in 100K, maybe 150K into. And then usually the ARV after that is somewhere in the 650 to 750 range.
Right.
So
And then are you buying these properties with your own money upfront and then doing refi, or do you have a hard
we're
money or private money?
we're doing conventional lending on almost everything. So we do have a seller financing deal going through right now on 2 properties. Actually, that's going to be the one out of state property that I'm gonna have, or 2 out of state properties that I'm gonna have. But primarily conventional lending, but still able to get conventional on these distressed. So it's they still have the bones to be able to get the conventional lending.
So these properties that you're buying, getting conventional loans, so they're functional properties, but just need updating,
They're
right?
updating. We bought a grow house, marijuana grow house,
Nice.
that was in pretty rough shape. So
And
that
you were able
one,
to get financing on that?
we were able to get financing on it, mostly due to the fact that the problem with the marijuana grow house was in the attic. So we ended up having to gut the entire house because once we did a little bit more diving, everything had to be gutted. But the untrained eye, it looked like a beautiful move-in ready house.
Right. Wow, interesting. And then what about the money for rehab? Is that your own money, or are you getting bank to lend you money on that too?
So it's a combination of either money that we have from the cash flow of the rental properties. We also have a HELOC that we utilize for some of the rehabs. And then once we
Okay.
refi, we pay off the HELOC. Sometimes based on how much we just pulled out of a refinance, we may have the money sitting around. So I think one thing that might be a little bit different than our strategy than everybody else's would be that we're pretty dang patient. We're looking for the right property. We're looking for a deal. We're not trying to grow our portfolio to 5,000 doors overnight. We're just comfortable, and my wife still has her W-2 job. I also own 3 other businesses, so we're very, very involved in the our work lives as well. So we eventually might get into full time on real estate, but I think we kind of like the balance of being able to go back and forth between work and real estate and play.
And then how are you finding these properties?
So previously, a lot of them were found on market, and we would look for properties that were sitting on the market for 90 plus days. And I would underwrite it before even viewing it. I'd call the realtor and ask them questions about the property. Why isn't it selling? And a lot of the time you can call the realtor and figure out what the issue is and if there's a deal to be had there. Lately, it's became more and more on relationships. So almost all of our businesses are involved in real estate one way or another. So I spend a lot of time talking to realtors. I spend a lot of time talking to homeowners. So we're able to find deals off market before they hit the market. And that's kind of been our sweet spot lately.
And then when you're working with an agent on these properties, do you have your own buyer's agent? Are you just working directly with the listing agent?
Depends. The one we're working on right now, we went direct to the seller and negotiated everything, and then we have an attorney writing it up, obviously, but and reviewing everything. But a lot of the time, I have a buyer's agent that puts in the offer for me, and a lot of the time we're finding it ourselves, and we're coming to them with the offer. And I'll admit sometimes these offers are a little disrespectful. I mean,
Right.
based on the condition of the property, we put in some offers that, I mean, most wholesalers wouldn't have an issue with these offers, but for the average on-market listing, sometimes they don't like what we're offering them, but a lot of times they don't have a choice.
Yeah, I mean, the worst that's going to happen is they say no, but the best is, hey, they come back, either they accept it or they come back with a counter, so they have some motivation going on there.
Uh, Absolutely. And we've been surprised that the agent was like, there's no way my client's going to accept this, but I'll present it to him. And then sure enough, they accepted it. So
Yeah.
the worst you can do is ask.
Oh, absolutely. I remember first property I bought was listed on the market with 65. I made an offer of 20, just thinking what's the worst that's going to happen. And I think they accepted for like 22.5 or 25,000. I would have never
Yeah.
imagined that, but I'm like, hey,
Yeah,
I'll never know unless I make an offer on these properties.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And you said you have a couple of other businesses in real estate. What other businesses do you have?
So I own a business called Suncrest Digital. We do 3D virtual tours and real estate photography. So we do websites
Nice.
for real estate. We do marketing flyers. We do marketing videos. We do pretty much everything you could.
Primarily for agents, I would imagine, yeah.
Primarily for agents. We also do a lot of 3D virtual scans for like remodels, a lot
Okay.
of commercial buildings, a lot of like Nike, Jamba Juice, Baskin Robbins. Anytime they're trying to do a remodel, we'll go in there and do
Okay.
a 3D scan of their property so that they have a BIM model to do the
Right.
remodel.
Yeah, so that's going to be cool that if an agent reaches out to you, kind of know that property is coming on the market, and sometimes you're able to make a deal on that.
Yeah, that's how the last two have come along, is from
Nice.
agents I actually have relationships with that I work for on a regular basis, and they know we're actively buying in the area.
Right. Are you doing anything actively to like nurture these relationships, build, new relationships, or you just have like a small group of agents that you're working with?
So right now I've probably got about 75 to 100 agents that I work for on a regular basis. And yeah, a lot of it's I see them on a regular basis. And I
Right.
think that's I very easily could hire somebody to do my job for me, but that would take out the relationship part of the business.
Absolutely.
And I actually enjoy what I do. So and I like being able to show up at a property, and I like walking properties even if I'm not
Right.
planning on buying them. So I see a whole lot of real estate, and I get a really good feel from what the market's doing in certain neighborhoods, why people are selling. I get to talk to sellers all the time, daily,
Right.
and kind of get the inside scoop from sellers, from agents, from contractors. What I've basically got my ear to the ground to be able to hear what's happening in our market.
That's fantastic, man. And then you're doing some pretty big rehabs. You have a contracting background. Are you the one who's, coming up with the estimated value? I mean, estimated rehab number, or once you get the property under contract, then you have a contractor walk through.
So I'm basically the GC on all of our projects. My dad is a contractor up in Oregon.
Okay.
So I grew up slinging hammers and helping out with that type of stuff. So when we first started investing, I think more seriously, a lot of it was us staying at the property till midnight painting walls. And
Right.
so I think the value in doing it that way, at least to begin with, is you start learning how long things take to fix, how to fix them, what the cost should be. And so then when you're starting to get to a higher level where you need to start bidding out jobs to different people, you know what stuff should cost. So I'm able to walk through a property now and say, okay, that toilet's going to cost $120 to replace. This is going to cost 50. And I'm able to walk through the property pretty quickly and figure out what our rehab budget's going to be on that property, because we've done it so many times.
Right.
And one of the things that we do is we hold all of these properties long term as rentals, but we use the same exact flooring, the same exact paint, the same exact cabinets in every single one of them. So there's not really much of a guessing game on like how much is
Right.
this one going to cost. And then whenever a tenant moves out, we already have the paint, we already have the flooring, we already know what's in that property. There's no going back to my notes trying to figure out what we did on that one specific property, because we do the same thing every single time.
Absolutely, man. And anyone that's listening to the show and they live in a, more higher price market, either in California, New York, or, on the coast or other markets, like what would you tell them on getting started? Should they look for, just to get started, like you buy something out of state, or just, double down on their backyard, even if it's expensive?
It depends on your specific situation. At the time, I had a very good income and I wasn't concerned about cash flow nearly as much. I was more concerned about long-term appreciation. And I also wasn't home very often. So the California house hack worked very well for my situation. There's other people that they are trying to leave their 9 to 5 job, and cash flow is very important to them. I think investing in the Midwest, where you get a lot more cash flow, might be the right thing for some people out the gate. If you have a higher income and you're trying to invest in your specific market, there's obviously a lot of tax advantages to it being owner occupied. You're able to, I guess, know your market quite a bit better because you live there.
Right.
So
Absolutely.
I think think there's pros and cons to both of it, but I think if you're in a high cost market and you're trying to figure out what to do, I think the first thing you have to do is just learn your market, learn what you can afford. If you can't afford it and you can't find a way to seller finance it, or you can't find something maybe 15, 20 minutes outside of town that's a little more affordable, then out of state might be your best option. And I know when I was trying to buy my first place, San Jose seemed very, very, very overwhelming from a price standpoint. I came from Oregon, so moving to the Bay Area was like numbers were mind-boggling.
Right.
So once you live here for a while, you start getting used to it, and you're like, oh, that's $2 million. Okay.
Adding an extra zero or two after the Oregon prices, right? That's
Yeah,
crazy.
yeah, pretty much.
Um, would you buy anything if you felt confident about appreciation if the property did not cash flow from day one?
In our current situation, absolutely. We've got enough cash flow now that we're not overly concerned about the cash flow. So, with where the interest rates have gone over the last year, we've got a refi. We pulled all of our money back out of it on the BRRR, and it barely cash flows. But I still really like that community. We've got 8 doors on like the same 2 streets. And so we feel confident about that community. We feel confident about that property because we just went through every bit of it, rehabbing it. We've got good tenants in place. So I think it really comes down to what you're comfortable with. And if an extra $300 or $400 a month makes a difference to your lifestyle, then you should be investing in the Midwest. If you're not concerned about that extra $300 or $400 a month per door, then maybe you can go with some of these more high appreciation, longer term holds where the
Yeah.
the appreciation is going to pay you back probably a lot more than that 300 or 400 a month.
Absolutely. Yeah, when you look at like even if you're cash flowing, I mean, you have negative cash flow 300 to 400 bucks a month. That's like, let's say 5,000 for the year. And if it's a $500,000 property, it just has to appreciate 1% for you to like break even, including on the equity side of it. If it
Yeah.
appreciates, let's say 5%, then you have extra $20,000 after the negative cash flow. So definitely, I mean, if appreciation, you could rely on appreciation, the amount of money you would make on appreciation would, I think, far outpace what you're going to make from cash flow. That's not what I personally recommend anyone. Like I buy in Midwest, but cash flow is very important for us. My thought process is okay, if I buy something, I know cash flow, I can count on it from day one. It's only going to go up after that. But if
Hmm.
appreciation happens, that's bonus. But someone who's buying in California, there's a friend of mine I was talking to the other day. He's buying $1 million property and it's going to negative cash flow like 600 bucks. I said the
Hmm.
same thing to him. If it just the property just appreciates 1% for the year, you're going to be positive, in equity. But it's up to you if you can hold that $600-700 negative cash flow for a couple of years because the rent is going to go up
Yeah.
eventually, and then you'll start breaking even. Then you're going to start having positive cash flow. So it's very interesting. Like buying everything in Midwest and looking at these California properties, and investors feeling more comfortable with buying, break even, or in some cases negative cash flowing, knowing that the appreciation is something that they can rely on. It's totally
Yeah.
different
Yeah.
market. Yeah.
We I don't think we've ever purchased anything that was negative cash flow from day
Right.
one. It's all value add to be
Value
able
add.
to get the cash flow, also to pull the money back
Yeah.
out on the refi.
When you're buying properties now, like how big of a factor it is in your cash flow, the higher interest rate and the fact that hopefully you'll be able to refi in 2 or 3 years for a much lower and have the additional cash flow. Are you going in saying, hey, worst case, this is going to be my high interest rate for next 30 years?
Yeah, that's kind of how we're underwriting everything right now, is we're assuming that interest rates are going to stay high, but it's going to be icing on the cake as
Yeah,
soon as they do come back
ex
down. And they have to come back down eventually. Are they ever going to
absolutely.
be 3% again? I don't know. My crystal
Yeah.
ball's broken now, but I think eventually they will come back down. And like I've told my wife, the second that they do come back down, we're going to do several refis. We're going to be able to pull out a substantial amount of equity that's just sitting there, and we're going to cash flow even better at the lower interest rates. So I think
Absolutely.
it's gonna be a wild time as soon as interest rates come back down because the
Absolutely.
market's just so repressed right now.
Yeah. And I think that's the smart thing to do is like if it cash flows, if the numbers make sense with a higher interest rate, it's only going to be a bonus, if and when the interest rates come down. So, are you working with a local bank, I assume?
I have a broker that we go through, and he finds us really, really, really competitive rates.
Okay. So it's not just one bank. You just work with a
No.
broker and then he'll
Yep.
just get you the best terms. Okay. And then you
Yep.
do refi 30-year fixed.
Yep. And one thing that we sometimes do on these is, as long as it still cash flows, we'll take a lender credit for a higher interest rate on the purchase. And then
Okay.
when we refinance it, we pay down to get a lower interest rate on the refi.
Got it. Cool. That's
So
awesome, man.
that I think we have a investment property that's at like 3.25% because we
Oh,
bought it down 30-year fixed. And so that seems like a dream now after seeing what
dude,
rates are at
that's
now.
great.
But
That's like literally less than half of what investors are getting right now.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
I
it's
have a
crazy.
friend of mine who has his primary resident in California, 30-year fixed at like 2.5 or 2.6%. That's
Mhm.
crazy. That's like one third of the interest rate right now. That's insane.
Yeah.
Just
Our
like,
primary is at 2.6. So I
wow.
told my wife we're probably stuck here forever.
Right? Yeah. I mean, that's just like who would want to just get rid of that, sub 3, 4% interest rate? Yeah.
Yeah,
That's insane,
it's
man.
crazy.
Cool, man. All right. Moving on to the next section of our podcast. What do you do for fun?
Travel. We're really, really big on traveling, and we do mini getaways. So we'll go away for the weekend to Vegas or get away to Hawaii just for the weekend.
Nice.
Our probably favorite place is Cancun. Close second's probably Bora Bora.
Yeah.
So
Do you guys have any kids?
my wife is actually pregnant right now. So
Oh, cool.
she's we're
Congratulations.
expecting in June. Thank you so much. We're
Congra-
super excited. So we're about to have a new hobby.
Nice, nice. A boy or a girl, or are you gonna keep it a
It's
surprise?
it's a boy. Yeah.
It's a boy. Oh man,
Yep.
that's many congratulations. Yeah, I was
Thank you so
wondering,
much.
like, you have these weekend getaways. So I was wondering if you have kids. I have two kids, so the weekend getaways don't always happen. Yeah.
Yeah,
Cool,
yeah.
man.
So we've been trying to maximize the weekend getaways the last month or two
Absolutely,
while they
man.
still
Yeah.
exist.
Get that all out of your system, man. The next year or two
Exactly.
is gonna be very, very interesting. Yeah, congratulations to you and your wife.
Thank
Um,
you.
what's the one book that has had the biggest influence in your life? It could be personal, it could be business, could be one of each.
I hate saying it, but it's the truth, so I have to say it. Rich Dad Poor Dad.
Oh man, I,
I
I was just I should have guessed that. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
I I hate saying it just because it's
Yeah.
so cliche, but I think that was really when like the light switch in my head clicked about
Yeah.
liabilities and assets and being able to understand. My parents and my grandparents were very, very good at making investments, but they never explained any of that to me.
Right.
And
It just came
so
naturally
reading,
to them. Yeah.
yeah, it just, I guess it was just out of habit they did what they did, but
Right.
they never understood why they did what they did. And so
Yeah.
Rich Dad was able to put that into words and just make the light switch click in my head of why it works. And
Is
so I think that was the biggest one.
Isn't that amazing? Like after you read the book, you're like, man, this is just such common sense almost. Like it
A
is
hundred.
something they should teach it in school, you know? It's like
Absolutely.
such a
Eh,
basic thing, but when you read it, like, holy crap, like this is amazing. Yeah.
our schools don't teach the right things, I'm
Yeah,
convinced. And I think that should be required learning for like every grade
absolutely.
schooler.
100% agree with that. All right, man. If there is one person, dead or alive, that you could spend a day with, who would you want to spend the day with and why?
That's a good question. So I'm torn. I've got like a personal one and then like a entertainment one. So I'm gonna
That's
give you
fine. We
two
can,
answers.
yeah, that's
I'll give
cool.
you two answers. So from like a personal standpoint, I think Tony Robbins would be amazing to spend a day with.
Nice. Yeah.
The his thought process and the way he understands things. I've seen him a couple times in person, and I leave every time just like in awe with how his understanding of us and why
Right.
we do things the way we do them and what works. And so I'm blown away by Tony, and I think it'd be a pretty cool day, a pretty cool experience to
Oh,
spend a
100%.
day with
Yeah.
Tony.
Yeah.
From an entertainment standpoint, I think Elon Musk.
Oh
I
yeah,
don't know. I don't know anybody that would probably be more entertaining for an entire day.
absolutely, man.
And
He's got a
he's also
different thought process. Yeah,
next
he's got a
level
different one.
smart, where he's just thinking different, and that's intriguing to me.
Yeah, maybe you can talk to him and start buying some properties on Mars. Be the first one.
Heck
Cool,
yeah.
man. All right, Jesse. This has been great, man. If someone wants to connect with you, learn a little bit more about what you're doing, what's the best way for them to connect with you?
So we share some of our real estate journey at on Instagram at Rehab Hackers.
Cool.
And so we it used to be a lot more focused around rehabbing properties and finding inexpensive ways to do these rehabs. And right now it's more focused around just real estate in general. So we try to give tips, and if anybody has any questions about real estate, or we go to a lot of the real estate meetups in the area. So we like meeting new people, building connections, and so reach out to us, especially if you're in Northern California.
Absolutely, man. We'll put that in the show notes. Thank you, Jesse. This has been absolutely wonderful talking to you, man.
Thank you so much.